Here.
Maybe here. John.
Here.
Doug.
Here.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Need a motion for the consent agenda.
So move to approve.
Got a motion and a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Public input, some time and place for discussion items not already on the agenda with time limit of 3 minutes each. Discussion and possible action on current COVID-19 policies at City Hall. I asked Brandon to put this on for, I knew Mount Vernon was going to talk about it last Monday. And that's pretty much what I told him. Discuss. I personally think that we could drop the mask mandates in the City Hall. I mean,
What's the only place we have it mandated? I think that your choice is good enough. I mean, they want to wear it, they can, we don't have to.
So I had, just following the guidance, I had talked to Doug about putting a sign, removing the current sign and just ask that all unvaccinated people wear a mask prior to entering. That gives them it's not required. We just ask that they do. It would apply in all city-owned buildings and properties. City staff who remain unvaccinated will be required to wear a mask when speaking to the public. And then all city staff who are vaccinated are no longer required to wear a mask. We're not requiring city staff to get vaccinated or any of that. It's just, I think until the guidance changes, that's what we followed the whole time. So,
I don't have a problem.
If we have any city staff that doesn't want to get vaccinated, do they have to wear a mask or not?
correct, yes.
And can we do that under the governor's latest
Well,
announcement?
from what I understand from what they passed was, we can't, the main part of that, I know that they said cities and counties, but what that means is the city or county can't implement a mandate,
Oh, yeah.
but you can still do it in public places. So like, for instance, the city of Mount Vernon is still in effect till June 1, correct? So, yeah, you can still, you know, Doug can choose to do it at his business if he wants to, but we can't have any blanket, other than,
The city can't make me.
correct, other than at our own public place. So,
Yeah, I think a choice is fine. I mean,
I
we're all
agree.
in here without a mask now, so, you know, I don't think that's a big deal. Most people are getting used to that now. I see it more and more, and you go into places and people don't have masks, so.
All right, another thing with this is, if one of our employees would come down with COVID-19, are we paying for them time off? Now that they have the opportunity to get vaccinated?
Well, you can still get it, even though you've been vaccinated.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
I think you can't,
I
I don't
think-
think you can,
if they've already taken advantage of the COVID pay, they cannot, I think. Isn't that correct? Correct me if I'm
don't they
wrong?
just use sick leave regardless?
At that point, yes.
there was a time that anybody that was out on quarantine, they were given time off, free, if you will. It was called COVID time.
Mhm.
But I think the question Doug's asking if, it's not so much, if people have been vaccinated, they've done everything they could to avoid getting it per se. He's talking about the people that are unvaccinated. If they come down with it, is the city still going to honor that, or is something we cross that bridge when we get there? I don't know of any, the legality stuff, if anything's changed, you know, through the course of time with that. I think that was his question to me. So that would be something that,
If it was a regular flu, we would just say take sick leave, wouldn't we?
correct.
So I'd say that.
And that's how they're treating it now, even at schools. Like that's, so that's kind of where I would go with it.
Well, I know ours is a little different because we have the ability to remote work. So they can still work just from home. I know they can't do that here.
Keep in
So-
mind, there's no quarantine guidelines anymore. So for instance, you know, vaccinated or not, unless you show symptoms, you don't have to quarantine. So
Okay,
that's not an issue like it was. Remember, we had guys at 2 and 2 in the trucks
Yeah.
and. we're like,
Rotating
yeah.
weeks and,
So that's not an issue anymore, but it was just kind of a discussion that kind of goes with it, and I'm good with whatever you guys.
I think that, I don't know, I'm a little iffy on that one because I think that if you implement something like that, that, you know, you get sick, you can't have time off, or you don't get the COVID pay or whatever it is, I think you run the risk of kind of sending the signal that, you know, you're requiring it, which we're not. And I don't think we should. It's a choice. So I would be a little bit hesitant because of that.
Okay, but if, and I'm just gonna play devil's advocate, Travis. If you get influenza A or influenza B, you know, you just take sick time. You know,
Right.
You know, the city, you just use your sick time. You don't, you know, the city don't pay you.
Correct.
You know, is that what you're talking?
But you're not, we don't have to follow the contact guidelines anymore, so it's, if somebody gets COVID, it doesn't mean that everybody in the office has to quarantine for 14 days now.
correct.
The only time you have to quarantine is if you have symptoms. And it would be no different, as far as I'm concerned. You know, if you have symptoms, you're sick, you should stay home, you know, and you can take your sick day. That's what it's for, and that's how it's supposed to work.
We'll cross that when it comes. But as of right now, the way I understand you guys is, we're gonna drop the mask mandate, and then Brandon will post what you read to us.
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
I think that we need to come up with a resolution now as far as like, instead of, let's be proactive instead of reactive. I don't think that does anything as far as, let's determine now what happens instead of if it does happen. I think being proactive on this makes us look far much better than it does reactive. So let's come up with something as far as, it's a yes or no. Will they just take sick pay or will they take COVID pay?
Sick pay.
I agree, sick pay.
I agree, sick pay. You want that as a motion?
I think it's a good idea.
I motion that if any employees moving forward were to get COVID, that they will be required to take sick pay.
And the mask mandate thing.
And yes, and letting our guests who come into the building,
When do you want to
Determine.
start this? Tomorrow?
I'd say immediately.
Good, tomorrow morning. Have a second?
Second?
Got a motion, second, Sarah,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Travis,
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Discussion and possible action on approval of final bid of AEC contracting for housing rehabilitation program in the amount of $33,279 for 406 North Washington. Motion?
Move.
Motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Travis,
Aye.
Nate,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
Public hearing, third and final reading of ordinance 03/2021, amending chapter 162 floodplain management.
I'll move to approve the third and final reading.
Do you have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Nate,
Aye.
Travis.
Aye.
Sarah.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Public hearing for changes to chapter 78 golf carts.
I'll move to go into public hearing.
Do you have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
First reading of ordinance 04/2021, chapter 78 golf carts.
So you will see I attached, hopefully they're in color to you. The ones in blue are the changes, to make it a little bit easier, so if you want to know what changed, compared to what we had. And then I also just printed a clean copy behind it.
So does this pretty much mirror what Mount Vernon's is?
This
Yes.
is exactly,
Exactly the same thing.
Okay, good. I mean,
Did Mount Vernon's pass?
We have one
First
more reading, first week of June. But there's been no hesitation on it so far.
Okay.
Doug, you want to talk about, there's some questions about the changes in the fines? Yeah. you wanna-
Couple changes you'll notice on the last page under the fine amount after Brandon and I met with the city attorneys, both city attorneys, and they both concur. We changed the fine format where before you had it as a tiered offense, first offense, second offense, third offense, moving that up, which was not necessarily consistent with Iowa code, which is where this ordinance is also based in Iowa code. So to keep that clean, we took it back to the Iowa code definitions. It'll flow better in the court system. If we ever do have a violation, then we need to process through that. It'll keep that portion of it cleaner. And my point of it is, the fine amount's not really the important part of it is council will still have the ability to revoke the permit, or, the cities can revoke the permits for violations too, as it goes in your neck. We left that portion of it in there as well, so they can get the $135 fine plus cost, which will end up being about a $200 fine each time we have an issue. But then the cities can also continue to follow the tiered system for violations, including if there's repeat violations, they can get to a point where they just can't have a permit anymore and they won't be able to get them. So keeps the tracking easier for the police department, rather than looking at every single incident and saying, is that a first offense or a third offense at the time of the violation. We now know that we can just issue a citation, and it's always the same fine amount, keeps that part clean. And then if we're gonna bring it before council, we can go back and do the research and see exactly how many issues we've had with that same person, bring that to council and present it to you that way. So I think that part was pretty clean. The only other thing they talked about, we had the addition of the mirrors, was the only other change that I can think of right now off the top of my head. But yeah, questions or anything like that, I'm happy to answer.
We already require lights, right?
So that was one of the other topics. So we talked a lot about the nighttime, daytime, sunrise to sunset condition that was in the ordinance. That's actually in the Iowa code portion as well. So that's why we didn't allow it past that portion anyway. My recommendations to you is to keep it at sunrise to sunset, remaining consistent with Iowa code again. That's what we're recommending for Mount Vernon as well. And then, if there's a ball game or if there's some special event that's allowing, it's 10 o'clock at night and they're all buzzing home and they're going directly home or something like that, officers would have that discretion to allow that to occur and kind of go through on a case by case basis. But if it's, much later and they've deviated to 7 other locations other than straight home, we can handle that too.
Okay, that was my question, because I know a lot of them, during festivals, like the
Yeah.
sauerkraut days or whatnot, people do drive later on, just
Yeah.
because it's easier.
So, in our code right now, we don't require lights in that tail lights, right?
Just brake lights.
Right.
Just brake lights.
And all of that will be the same, unless, like I said, if there's nighttime operation, or like I said, the only exemption in the back was for UTVs as well, for snow removal. If they're actively involved in snow removal operations, they can do that.
Have we got any more questions for him? Motion
Thank
to
you.
go out of public hearing.
Motion to go out of public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
First reading, 04/2021, chapter 78 golf carts.
Motion to approve first reading.
Motion-
Second.
motion Second, Sarah.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Travis.
Aye.
Public hearing on Highway 30 resurfacing bids.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
All right, this is a public hearing, give the public a chance to comment on the proposed project. This is to do an overlay of Highway 30 from the west city limits out to east city limits. And this is a project to take off about 1.5 to 2 inches of asphalt that's damaged and put in an interlayer and 3 inches of asphalt on top of that. So estimated cost on this for the base bid is $1.1 million, and then we have an alternate bid in here to place some turn lanes at different locations that was requested. So we'll report on bids here at the next bid item, or at the next agenda item.
So you said there was alternate bid for turning lanes?
Yes.
Where were those at?
They're out, there's a set that's out towards the, is it 4L? I think is.
No,
or is
there's,
it out there?
Novak Road, top of the hill,
Yep.
Got
so it'll be a turn lane.
A left turn lane
West Beck,
eastbound.
yep. It's kind of like
That's
a,
not-
they call it suicide lane.
That's Second Lisbon.
Oxbow.
Ah, so, yep. The old, that was the old, yeah. And then, there's also a turn lane into Willow. So there's already a turn lane if you're heading westbound, this will be eastbound. This will be going into the ponds,
Was there already one there, isn't there?
just for
Just the
westbound, this would be eastbound.
But this would be.
Oh, I understand, okay, yeah.
And then we were gonna, the asphalt's actually there at Washington, but we were just gonna paint the turn lane there for Sutton Road.
Okay.
There, I think that's it.
We're doing a little bit of work out here too.
Oh, but the addition also was added at 4L here. There's a water shut-off in through here. So Travis requested that be asphalted to avoid issues with that. And then we're gonna take the millings, and we're getting a lot of traffic back through here behind 4L to the softball field. This area here, kind of the old campgrounds already have millings in it. And so we mill everything, including the parking lot above the field.
Okay.
Um,
What about into Seeds of Faith? I know it's not a high traffic area, but I know it can.
So that side of the road is county
Oh, okay.
jurisdiction, or would you not have a turn line there?
Now, if you remember from the previous.
Yeah, that blue, Travis, the
Yeah.
blue, that's all county.
Oh, understood.
In-
All the way back to left.
Inbound, the north, the west lane starts clear out here at Seeds of Faith. But the outbound, eastbound lane stops here just past out there.
Okay.
But if you remember in the bid though, they billed us, then we in turn bill the county for that portion, because otherwise the county's gonna stop where their jurisdiction is a double lane, which is out here at the grant.
Oh, understood. Okay.
Any other questions? Motion to go to public hearing.
Motion to go out, public hearing.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Discussion and possible action on Highway 30 resurfacing phase.
Bid tabulations here from our bids we received last week. They were taken on Thursday. We sent out to quite a few different contractors, asphalt contractors in the area. Unfortunately, we only received one bid back, and that was somewhat expected. We generally see that with asphalt type projects, there's really only one producer of asphalt in the area, and that's Nat/L Building. And with as much quantity as there is here, that's not surprising that they're the only bidder. Initially, when we put the estimate together, we were using the bid numbers received earlier in the year from Lynn County for their portion of the project. And just in that short time, the costs have gone up significantly. And we did have a pretty good discussion with the contractor after the bids, and we opened them. Brandon and I both looked at this, and I was pretty surprised because initially they thought that with us extending the county project, they're already mobilized and there's a lot more quantity, so we should see a little bit lower costs. We were about 30% higher. So a lot of volatility in the market right now. Fuel prices are one of the big things that they said was an impact. They had a few different poles here because of the turn lanes, so there was a little bit more traffic control and whatnot. But one of the big items on this that was very surprising, the patchwork for the concrete that's underneath the asphalt, that really causes that asphalt surface to fail because the concrete underneath is bad. We had pulled up patching in there, and we're thinking somewhere around $50 to $60 a square yard. They were about $180 a square yard. So the price was just through the roof. We would recommend just tabling this at this time. We want to continue to talk with contractors and find out if it makes sense to maybe bid this out in 2 phases. One, to allow various different concrete contractors to come in and take a look at this and possibly do some of that patching up front. And then since we're not looking to do this until fall anyhow, based on what Helena told us, the county portion, they're going to do the whole project at once if they do both of them. We aren't really under any pressure to award this tonight. We can still have some discussion, find out if it's in our best interest just to reject all bids, put it back out there as a patch project, and see what the market does, see if some of these prices tend to stabilize a little bit. And it's not just on asphalt, we're seeing it for construction materials across the board. Things are just a little bit out of control right now with the volatility, so.
So what about if we wanted to, or had any ideas of urbanizing that road as far as curbing it or beautifying it, anything? I know that we had a comprehensive, or we had the beautification plan several years ago that had, you know, a lot of work that it was going to do to that Highway 30 corridor right there. Is that anything we could consider or would want to, or no?
We could consider it, but I don't think it would be cost effective.
Okay.
It would be very expensive to take that on. We would have to do quite a bit of work in order to get that set up. With a flat section like that, if you just put curb on it, you still need to get the water to run somewhere. If you're trying to collect that, you need to have some slope on the roadway. You need to do a little bit of variation in those gutter sections, which takes quite a bit of work to have those on wide enough that you can get a little bit of slope longitudinally to get the water to drain to certain points and put it in the ditch. So it's set up as a rural section, as a highway section, and it'd be a little bit difficult to get that to happen without a lot of expense.
Okay.
So when would you be talking about having rebid this?
Well, I think what we'll do, John, is we'll talk with a few contractors, come back with a formal recommendation at the next meeting, whether that's to take a look at this and possibly consider maybe not doing so much of the patching. The inner layer that we have in here is supposed to bridge some of that. We were thinking that with the funds that the DOT had given us, it would be a better end product to do those patches, but I don't know that it's a $500,000 investment. So perhaps if that's something we can take a look at a little closer with this inner layer, it's supposed to bridge over that and give you a pretty good life cycle. So that's one of the things we want to talk through a little bit more, is if we perhaps reduce the amount of patching quite a bit and save that money, and if we have to use a little bit down the road to take care of some small areas that show through because of that, that's still probably a better use of funds than to go through and try to get the Cadillac with doing all the indoor patching at that $500,000 expense. Recommendation would be just a table and consider it next week.
I'm okay with tabling it.
I am too. I think it's a good idea. It does seem to be quite a difference.
Do we need a motion to table it?
Yeah.
No? Yeah. I motion to table it.
Second.
Motion second. All in favor?
Aye.
Public hearing for possible changes to chapter 92 water rates. Need a motion to a public hearing.
So,
Motion second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So I met with Maggie from Spear Financial, and I believe she is on the call. Maggie?
I am.
All right.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Maggie with Spear Financial.
Hi, Maggie.
Hi there.
So basically what Maggie and I had talked about, we kind of did an analysis of the revenues, expenditures, and for the water rates, Maggie has about a 2% increase. You'll see on the first, again, like I did before, to show you in red what the new rate would be, and then you can see what's crossed out, the old rate. Maggie, do you want to talk about what you did to come up with this?
Yep, that would be fantastic. So we've done some analysis looking not only at fiscal year 2020, but also looking at that as far as we are in fiscal year 2021, when we're talking about the sewer charges, what has been charged for service, what those operation and maintenance expenses are. It also should be noted that the city has one outstanding water revenue SRF loan in the amount of $519,000 that was taken out in 2009. So you do have to meet or exceed what's called a 110 coverage factor. And that requirement just says that the water revenues minus expenses must be 1.1 times the amount of debt payment on an annual basis. Even with a 2% increase, as we are suggesting and we talked about with Brandon, your city administrator, this is exceeding the 110 coverage, but as time goes on, if expenses tend to rise, and in our schedules, if you look closely, you will notice that we increase the annual expenses in operation and maintenance by about 2% annually. And I know that some people would say, oh, I'm not sure that that happens, but we believe that the cost of supplies, testing, electricity, there's increases in salary, things like that, insurances that are written off to the water fund, that we think that you should conservatively believe that there is going to be some kind of an increase annually in expenses. The other piece that comes off of this is after we calculate the coverage factor, and that is a portion of the 2011 B bonds. From 2011, about $32,000 to $35,000 of that bond every year is paid with the water revenues because it was attributable to water projects. So we have figured that in after the fact. The city still has a very nice ending cash balance at the end of the fiscal year and expected at the end of fiscal 21. That's very important for you to be able to do projects as you go without having to borrow money for those on a quick turnaround. With that 2% increase, we expect the average bill to be somewhere around $34.65. Now, average bill is simply taking the revenues and dividing it by the number of accounts, which is 882. That is a little bit of an increase over probably where we were around $33.97 in fiscal year 21. So again, you're going from maybe $33.97 on average to $34.65. So the 2%, although it does get you a lot actually in the water system, it's pretty minimal to the average user.
Go ahead. Any questions for me? Anything for Brandon? Need a motion to go out of public hearing.
Motion approved. Public hearing, motion.
Second.
I don't know what I was supposed to say.
All in favor?
Aye.
I wrote down the word approved and I just wrote
Aye. Possible first reading ordinance 05/2021 increasing water rates. Have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
Got a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
Sarah?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Travis?
Aye.
Alright. Public hearing for possible changes to chapter 99, sewer service charges. Motion,
Motion to go into public hearing.
do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Alright.
So this is very similar to the water. The only difference is the sewer was a little bit more challenging this year. We had some unexpected repairs that were made, so it's really thrown the budget off as far as the sewer goes. However, doing the same analysis that we did, we thought a 3% increase in sewer was necessary moving forward, and I'll let Maggie speak on that.
Wonderful, thank you. So on the sewer rate side, as just spoken about, we are anticipating that you would need a 3% rate increase. Again, that is analyzing for 2020 and 21. The sewer charges for service are the annual revenues that have come in. Those operating and maintenance expenses, again, we do grow that by 2% on an annual basis for a conservative look. It's more important to talk that you do have multiple debts outstanding that are being paid with sewer. There is the 2004 sewer revenue SRF loan, the 2018 sewer revenue SRF loan, and then a supplemental 2018. There were 2 loans done in 2018 for the sewer SRF. We also do pay a portion of that GO bond with sewer from 2011B. That was a very large bond. If any of you were on the council at the time and had multiple repayment sources, we are noticing that that 3% increase really is needed to keep you at a 110 coverage, at least for the next 3 years. As we end fiscal year 24, you will have the 2004 sewer revenue SRF loan paying off. So at that point in time, things will look better for the sewer system. And that's not me speaking at all to any upcoming projects that you may have or planning projects in that sewer system, but that will remove a pretty significant amount of debt every year from what you need to pay with the sewer revenue. So again, at this time, versus the 849 accounts in the sewer system, we would be recommending upon our review a 3% rate increase. This takes that average monthly bill for sewer from about $46.28 to about $47.67. So we're going up approximately $1.40 per month for that average user in sewer.
You got any questions for Maggie? Any questions for Brandon?
Motion to go out of public hearing.
A motion and a second.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Possible first reading of ordinance 06, 2021, increasing sewer rates.
Motion to approve first reading.
Second.
Motion second, Sarah.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye.
Travis.
Aye.
Public hearing on adding chapter 29 to make Lisbon, Vernon ambulance director a city of Lisbon employee. Oh, yeah.
Motion to go into public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, what are we doing?
All right, so I talked about this last month. So this is a new ordinance. I met with personnel committee after the meeting last time. Basically, what this ordinance mirrors is the one that was created by Mount Vernon for Joe Jennison for economic development. And so you'll see this sheet of paper that I put in front of you. Personnel, as well as Mount Vernon City Administrator, we all agreed that option number 2 was the best option right now for us. And you'll see my side note there, where it says single plan for insurance. I added the 28% for Lisbon and the 38% for Mount Vernon. And the reason there was no numbers in there is because they weren't aware what our plan rates were. So this is an approximate health insurance cost is what I added over there for a year. At our portion, so that would be 28% at our rate. So as you can see, it should be 48 or call it 5,000 a year that we would be paying. What would happen is, if you read through this, the administration of the board would still oversee Jake as far as day-to-day, but obviously he'd still be a city employee here, Lisbon, follow our policies, procedures. We would pay him, he would be on a payroll, our payroll, and then we would have to bill Mount Vernon and the ambulance service for their portions. They would cut us a check very similar to how they bill us for the police protection. John, do you have any, I know Stephanie's not here, but
I think it's a good plan, and thank you to Brandon and Chris from Mount Vernon for coming up with this. I think it's a good start, and to hang on to good people, you need to have the benefits as well as the wage. So I'm very much in favor of it.
For those of you that don't know, Chief Shannon's also the president of the board. And then obviously Jake is here as well. Jake Lindau, the director. You have anything you want to?
Yeah, just a couple comments. So one, if you think back before pre-Jake and some of the struggles we were dealing with the ambulance service when I got onto the board, staffing was a huge issue. Running the rigs, having services in town consistently was problematic at best. So there was a lot of things going on in that aspect. When we went through the hiring process, brought Jake on board, you know, we were trying to continue to find a way as a volunteer organization without funding other than what's coming in on the revenues. And as you've seen over the time too, there was Jake's done some education to everybody in the councils on both sides, educating them what people think that the revenues are and what they actually are, and the differences that come in from that. And so to run that service the way it is, the way it's been, has been significantly different in the last few years. And so over the last couple of years, the board was trying to continue to strive to get Jake's wage and benefit package competitive with other organizations similar. It's kind of hard to say that because there's not a lot of organizations like the Lisbon Mountain Ambulance Service. Some of them are city-based, some of them are completely, you know, they're attached to fire departments, and some of them are completely volunteer, or more of a hybrid. Volunteer definitely based, but with the full-time director and kind of building into that. And so a few years back, we started a 401k, because that's really about all we could afford at that time. It's something to continue to grow that product and try to keep good employees, just like John said, keep good employees here as we go. Since that time, you probably saw the annual report and how things are looking right now. Jake is consistently having enough staff and volunteers on the service that we're pretty much scheduling 2 buses, 2 ambulances, pretty much all the time. It's not hard to find 2 crews, which before we were trying to find the first crew as it goes. So public safety in the ambulance side of things have done a 180-degree change in that aspect. So I fully support this. I appreciate you considering it because it brings him into, as an IPERS employee, it gives him a good solid retirement plan that he can continue to work through from that. It makes the position probably mid-range, maybe a little higher than mid-range across the state for organizations like ours. So he's not the top paid or anything from that standpoint, but I think it's definitely a respectable wage. And I will say it's definitely, we went to a recent board meeting. I recommend a minimum of a 2.75% pay raise effective July 1st. The board was adamant that he should get a 3.5%, and that's what they approved effective July 1. So Jake's done a phenomenal job continuing to manage the organization and take care of the community that way and do outreach. So.
One thing I wanted to be clear, just so everybody understands, the ambulance service in option 2 is still paying the entire salary. So we bill them the whole salary. So our amount would literally be the employee benefits portion of 28%, which would be around 4,800 a year. That would be what we would pay out of our funds. And I won't be able to do it next year, but for the following years, assuming we continue to do that, would be we can levy for the employee benefits.
So basically, we're doing this so that he can get the benefits. And
So you get IPERS and health insurance, because if you're a one-man shop, you know, it's about impossible to get decent health care coverage at a good rate. So this would be allow us to go on to, you would be a city employee, but as you see, how it's arranged, you know, the board of directors are gonna appoint the ambulance director subject to your approval.
Okay.
So, this is, Chris and I met, and we just mirrored this with the diligence and ordinance and all that.
Anybody else have any questions? Motion public hearing.
Motion to go out of public hearing.
Second.
Motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Possible reading, first reading of ordinance 07/2021 ambulance director.
Move to approve first reading.
Motion to approve
I
first.
second.
Second, Sarah.
Aye.
John.
Aye.
Nate.
Aye. Aye.
Approving resolution 19/2021, transfer of funds.
So these are all the payments that we have to pay each year. Connie came in, worked with Christina to get all these processed, and we just need to do it by resolution to make it official.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the resolution?
Second?
Second.
Travis?
Aye.
Nate?
Aye.
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Correspondence?
You'll see the letter I also attached up there. A while back, the Historic Preservation Committee submitted their annual report, talked about the things that they were doing. If you read through that letter from the Paul Moore from the State Historical Building, obviously a huge shout out to for Lisbon for their annual report, just for the quantity of work and the actions that were taken, especially during the COVID year. They said that they have good partnerships and organizations. They're very active and good outreach through their Facebook and the local newspaper. So they said they were very impressed, and I wanted to pass on a thank you to them for all their hard work. John, I think you're a member of that as well, correct?
Yeah, I'm in a liaison city, and they are very dedicated. And Brenda, are you gonna mention your comments then about the other engineering?
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Okay.
I just wanted to share that.
All right. City engineer report. Nate?
We submitted the site survey request form to DNR for the well. We're still working with YPT on the soccer field expansion to make sure we can get that situated properly, but it does take a little bit for the field office to come out and take a look at the area so we can submit that. We expect to hear from them in June and get that site cleared, and then we can move forward with the well design.
Where did you decide for those sites or well?
It's going to be west of that access road that goes to the care facility. So north of the barn, there's sort of a, I think it's a garden area.
I think, yeah, dog park, potential, nature area now, but potential dog park.
We have to have some separation from the dog park just because of what the dogs do out there, so.
It's gonna get down that far?
Yeah. Apparently, they were going to, so we had to make sure that we had separation from that. And then the other part of that project is still waiting on trying to get the income survey done. I don't know if those have been sent out yet. But
Yep, they're sent out, they're trickling in, and we sent some off, and I'm hoping for a few more, so.
Okay, once we get those back and identify the area that meets LMI, then we'll be able to carve out a project for CDBG on the water main improvements. Any questions?
When are we going to start the north end town? The water main project, all that stuff? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, that's what we were talking about is, you're talking about the CDBG, the water main repairs, replace small diameter mains, yeah. So once we get the CDBG application in, for the area that qualifies for the LMI, low to moderate income.
That's what the survey is
That's what the
for.
surveys are for. So we get the surveys back, we find out the areas that qualify, we identify a project area, we have to put in an application to CDBG, and then if we're awarded, they have to do their environmental review and whatnot. It takes 6 or 7 months after the time that we put the application in to get all the paperwork done before we can bid the project.
So we're talking next year before we can start that.
Yes, and I would recommend next year, water main, PVC water main, you can't get it right now. Everything is higher because people are having to go to ductile iron, which is generally more expensive, and now that the PVC is not available, everybody's going to that. The demand is high there as well, so as I mentioned, it's construction materials in general, the prices are just crazy right now.
All righty. Anything else? Anybody got anything for Dave?
When did we ask, or when did we approve the location for the well?
2 meetings ago, I think it was, we had talked about 2 options, and we looked at the one near the care facility. We were talking through that with the annexation. We looked at 2 possible sites down near the interchange as well sites, but with the annexation and the improvements necessary to get services out there being so expensive, we decided that wasn't really a good spot. So we had looked at the sites up on the north. I handed out some displays
We selected the site out near that barn on the old farm that the city has by the soccer fields.
You mean the nature area park that we're putting out there? That's,
It's kind of, it's like where, are you familiar with where it curves? It's kind of in between like where the sports complex meets the Myers property. It's like in that, out in that corner.
The nature area is actually a very good place for that. The well has certain requirements. You can't put down any chemicals, so you can't put down pesticides, herbicides, or to control weeds or anything. You have to be certain distances from things in order to comply with the site separation, which is what DNR is going to come out and do their survey on. But we've already looked at all those separations, and that was one of the sites that seemed to fit very well. And if we put that as a nature area, we can't do anything out there to change that site. That preserves that area, so we don't have issues with somebody doing something they shouldn't in that well zone.
so when we grow out to the east, we're gonna have to put another well in?
Yes. So the wells in general, when you look at the production, we're somewhere in the 200 to 250 gallons a minute. I think well 4, sometimes we can get up to 300 initially, but it ramps down. And if you figure that each person on average on a peak day is using about 150 gallons, you know, you can get maybe 2,000 people on a well like that before you need to do another one. So if our population starts growing or we get a high water users, we're going to be in trouble. Currently, we were looking at trying to use well 2, which is up at the railroad, and we have the contamination issues, so we were trying to get that cleaned up. The railroad said that they were going to terminate the lease on all railroad wells in the state, so that option went away. That was our backup. We were already behind the 8 ball and needed that well for meeting our firm capacity. Once that went away, if we lose number 4 out by Suit of Faith, the one here at the fire station wouldn't keep up during the peak day. So we need to put the next well in just to be able to meet our current firm capacity. And if we have high water usage, you know, if we bring in a business or something like that, or we get a lot of development and it starts to take more water usage, we'll need to put another well in, even beyond this one. The other issue you have is wells over time tend to lose capacity. That's just because the formation starts to get plugged up a little bit. There's only so much you can do with it to try to get it reestablished.
Okay.
Anybody else got questions for Dave? Public Works Director report. Anything from Travis?
I do. We're gonna have the street sweeper out by the weekend. He's helping, they're helping get the flags put up. So you see the ones downtown, look at the ones on Highway 30 this week. Fire department will help with whatever they need help with beyond that. They're planning to open the pool, I think it's next Tuesday, that'd be the 1st. Just one thing of note, they did go over and clean the pool, scrubbed it, power washed it. It's not dirty, it does need repainted. They're doing some touch-ups, but they need to blast it, so they're gonna do that in the fall. So, just so you know, everything should be ready to go there. I think that is all I have for him. Do you guys have-
So everything is working at the pool?
Yes.
as far
Yeah,
as-
we had a few issues, but got those resolved.
Good, I know it sat for an
Yeah,
entire year not
the
being
new
used,
lines,
so
new lines there, so,
awesome, it's good to know.
Hopefully now it'll last a little bit longer.
yeah.
Is it a little more seated friendly?
What's that?
Is it a little more
You
seated?
can
He's
get on the
laying
yes.
down now.
Fire Director, anything from Graydon?
I don't have anything from him.
Police Department?
Nothing additional unless you got questions.
Fire Chief?
I don't have a lot, other than the pager goes off a lot, that's about all I have there. And we'll be putting up the flags as needed to assist city staff.
City Administrators?
All right, I got kind of a lengthy list here, so bear with me.
Oh, boy,
Um,
get your seatbelts on, kids, run for a ride.
I'll start with the park update. The dugout is completely finished. Thank you to Coach Bob Bunning for painting. He took it upon himself to handle that, so that's a good deal there. The
Well,
temporary, sorry.
Painting, was that in the bid?
No, but insurance is covering that, so we'll get it.
Make sure you buy it.
Yep. The temporary light from Musco is in at the park. I wired up, given the keys out to the box. Should be ready to go. So I showed them all how to use it, and it's up and running. So it's going to be right by the concession stand. This is going to help the foul area and the area behind first base where the light was very dark. The work on the concession stand is pretty much complete. They are going to do a steel over the top instead of a tear off. I think you guys asked about that last time. It was a little cheaper. So they're going to do an overlay of what's there, and then put the 1x4s down over the new and put the steel up. So I think they said that comes in this week, but everything else is done there. They've got all the trusses that are all now put together. So there was one that bowed out at the end where the old awning fell off. So that's been taken care of. So that should be done this week. You'll see in your packet at the back there was a Lincoln Highway sign. Long and the short of it, Lynn County, Lynn County Historic Preservation had some funds, and they wanted to put a sign in Lisbon. The same sign is on the wall of the History Center. That is going to remain. This will be a new sign. We thought it'd be a good idea to put it down at Lincoln Square. So you'll see what it looks like. It's 4x8, just to give you a general idea. And it's going to be kind of facing the road, so it's just kind of there'll be people that'll pull in there to go up and look at it, whatnot. So, I did meet with Bonnie Robinson in reference to city health insurance. Got that renewed. Just so you guys know, it went down 4%. So she said a lot of that contributed to nobody using the doctor and stuff last year when everything was shut down. So even though it probably should be significantly more, at least it's 4% decrease than years past.
We'll go up 8% next year.
Yeah. Just so you guys are aware, the tractor that we ordered and the chipper should both be here in June. Both of them had about a 3-month lead time on that, so sometime in the middle of June those should be there. Also in June, we're going to be renting a stump grinder to probably the whole month of June to start grinding all the stumps there in the city right away. So, and then we'll start the process of planting trees. As I mentioned before, we have a list of trees that to pick from for those areas, so we'll get some direction from the tree board on that as well.
So are they planning on removing any more trees?
There are some that needs to come down, especially with the ash. They kind of got off kilter, but it's you just kind of get people when you can get them right now. And like for instance, on Jackson Street, there's some big ones that need to come down. But basically what we did is we've removed everything that's been a hazard or, that's problematic. So, but yeah, once we'll probably get the stumps out and start that route. Housing rehab grant, we extended that for next year, and I talked to Mark when I met with him about this year's project. He said there was 3 more applications that came in after we posted on the Facebook site, and he said it looks like 2 are going to qualify for sure. So that would max us out. So that's a good deal, good news. Update on the barns. I met with EMC, had their structural engineer out here, I think it was last Wednesday. We went over there. met with him. It was his request that no one go in or on those buildings for any reason, to include repairing the roof. And he thought that if it was the city's intention to have any opportunity to fix the barns, that we get a historical structural engineer in here. So I met with Ann and Becky last week, and they had requested to, they had some money left over in their budget, and they wanted to hire a structural engineer, historic structural engineer. And as you can see, I think I put that in the packet as well. One thing that he'll do is he'll give you a cost analysis of what damage and what will be needed, and hopefully in the ballpark of what costs, which I think is a key piece of information that will help determine what the future holds and what we want to do to hopefully keep those barns. So I think it's a step in the right direction. I think getting the cost in front of you, and then another opinion as well on the what type of bracing and supports that we need to make it safe is important. Also, the downtown, for the life safety of the History Center and the library, they were able to get grants for both buildings. It was approximately about half of what the life safety expenses were. So the library was a little less, right? I think it was 42 for the library and 24 for the History Center. So and again, kudos to the Historic Preservation and all the work Becky and Ann have done to get those grants, and they have another grant in for the next phase too. So,
Mark, you don't do anything.
I just sit here.
I think that's it.
Before you talked about them using the money from their budget to get an engineer in here, a historical engineer. If it goes over, obviously we will pay for that. I mean, they save their money.
I actually,
I was gonna ask that too, that would
I-
insurance
Well, actually,
cover
we don't
that?
have quite enough money in our budget.
so I approved I think it's key, after Becky sent me the list of things that this would be in this report, and I thought it was very important to have that done. There is some extra funds in there in the total budget, just not necessarily their line item. And so I went ahead and approved, told them to go ahead with that, just because I think it's an important part. And you guys, I think, especially with the cost initiative in there, would want that in order to make
Absolutely.
a good decision. So-
I was just wondering if insurance
So
would cover,
insurance covered the structural engineer.
okay,
But like he said, when you come out, he said you're gonna want somebody, a historic structural engineer that knows a little bit more about repairing it to that standard.
great,
And also, like Ann and Becky had mentioned in our meeting, that it is gonna be a second opinion to what he has. I don't have his report yet. He's supposed to give it to me by the end of the week, this week. So once I have that, I'll share it with them. I'll share it with Becky and Ann, and they can take it back to their committee. And but once I saw the document of everything that was in there, I think it's a no-brainer in my opinion. So.
This is important too for long-term restoration of buildings, because the preservation group is building up good relationships with those people that make the grants. And it's going to take a period of time and a number of grants to do what we want to do and make it affordable for the city.
I think like that letter I had shared with you guys earlier, I think that's a pretty important piece of that clearly they're in their eyes and they're in the forefront, so I think that's all good news.
I just want people to know, we would love to get those barns repaired. I mean, but we, as a city, can't do it by what the engineer had said. I mean, hopefully we can do it by what the historical engineer can say. But I mean, it's not like we just throwing our hands up on this. We want to try to save those barns just as much as anybody. You know, so I was looking at them today when I was mowing, and I was like, and it's just, I mean, there's nothing, you know, I know Steve's upset over there, but I mean, it's nothing that we can do. I mean, it really isn't.
No, well, we have to do everything in our power.
But yeah, there's nothing we can do, but we're gonna do everything we can.
There might be private donations too.
Yeah.
We don't know at this point.
Is that it? Christina, do you got anything?
No, sir.
You guys got anything since you guys were in a meeting?
No, we were just here in case you had questions or anything.
No, you guys were in a meeting earlier, weren't you? No? Not really.
No?
Anybody any questions for them? All right. Council report. Travis?
I know that you did the cost analysis of the bypass and getting services out to that. Is there any more analysis we can do? I know that someone had said something about an annexation study. I don't know if that was part of that, or, you know, I just feel like perhaps some people may have gotten a little bit of a shell shock because of the cost of what it said, but I don't want us to just dismiss it because of that. I think we still need to look at what we can do to get services out there to do that stuff. You know, whoever owns land out there is not going to want to develop that land if they don't have any services out there. And I think it's important to the community to give them an opportunity to grow. And if we don't do anything, we're not giving them that opportunity. So I don't want anybody to discount just because it had a high price tag to put some services out there that we should just, you know, forget. That's not what I'm here for. I want to see that developed out there. And so, you know, we need to do more studies, or we need to figure out more creative ways to come up with the money to do what we need to do to get that out there. And that's something that we need to do. It's important to me. I hope it's important to all of you guys, because it's a big deal. If we don't do something out there, then we do become that drive-by city, and we just do not want to be that. And if we sit on our hands and not do anything, the longer we sit and wait, the harder it's going to be for us to get it done. So I just want the rest of the council to keep that in mind and make sure that they are keeping that in the forefront. You know, it will help. It will help because it will help us be able to afford to do development downtown, to preserve things, to bring people here when the ball diamonds get built. You know, we're going to bring people to the city, and they're going to go to Mount Vernon. You know, they can stay here. They're going to go to Mount Vernon where they can get something to eat, or they can go to a shop. Okay, it's time to start paying attention to ourselves for a little bit, and that is going to play a big role in it. Is getting something out there and getting that land, that area developed. So
Are you talking like where the bypass comes in at?
yeah, the interchange.
Good.
Where we've always talked about.
Oh, no, I mean, there's other places. I mean, there's parts over there by the cemetery that we've looked at, annexing. I mean, it's just, I mean,
Yeah, but this is a driver.
I-
That's where they come into town. They're not coming into town.
I agree with you, 100%
So,
on that. Just the hard part about doing an annexing and putting the stuff in the ground, if no one builds there, you're screwed for one thing.
no, you're not, because they're not gonna not build there. It's not gonna be where they just say, oh, I'm not gonna build there, no, don't wanna do it. Once you start getting some services out there, and those people that have land out there can figure out that they can develop and make money off of it.
A lot of the land is owned by the DOT right now.
Right now, yeah, so just wait another 10 years to do anything, and by then it'll be too late.
I agree with you, Travis. I would love to see an annexation.
Well, then you make something happen.
I'm not the one that can make anything happen. I mean, that's your guys' choice to make that. But I
Dave,
mean,
when you gave us that report, you had talked about what was owned by the DOT, and there was some scenarios as far as, I can't remember the term you used. what was the term you used? Something about it was or, do you know where, like the land that,
The voluntary compared to the involuntary annexation.
maybe, was that at the,
So that the property owners have to want to come into city property, or into the city limits in order to do a voluntary annexation. There's also an 80-20 voluntary annexation, which requires 80% of the land area, not the owners, number of owners, but the amount of land. And you can bring in land into the city, it has to be contiguous with city limits now, it has to touch in order for you to be able to extend out. There are certain circumstances where they have used roadway. That's called a shoestring annexation. That's been challenged in certain locations. There's been a lot of dispute recently on that sort of thing, but there are ways to create a path to get out there so that it's contiguous and annex, but the property owner has to want to come in. And with that much property right now, as Doug mentioned, it's DOT owned. I'd have to look at the way that was written out, but I think that the people that sold that to the DOT for construction of the 30 bypass had the first right of refusal if they want to buy it back. So there's a lot that goes into that in order to get it back into a place. I don't think DOT is going to want to annex it in. We can talk with them and see if they'd be interested. They would have the majority of the land, obviously, but we also need to find those pieces in between. And then if it gets to a point where we need to do something to demonstrate that we can serve that area, we have to show what the cost for those services are, and then there should be some method to try to get compensated for the cost of extending those services out there to make it worthwhile for the city to do. You don't want to spend $3 million to have one small business out there that is only going to create a very small tax base and use very little service. That's a pretty big burden for not a lot of recoupment.
So we'd have to annex basically from Dollar General all the way out.
We could go out that way, or you could go south by the cemetery road, and there's a few parcels down there that you could pick up and get out towards the interchange on the sort of the south side of that. So there's different ways to do it.
But they got to be touching the city limits. You can't.
Well, I just think that, you know, if we could get something out there and it's more of an incentive for somebody to start to develop that area if that stuff is there, rather than, I want to develop this now and get it out there. Because they're more apt to not worry about it. They don't want to do that. They want it there, they want it ready so that they can build. You know, we need to do it. We need to put that on our hands, and we just need to do
Well,
it.
we can't just do it, Travis, so we gotta have, I mean, all the landowners, 80% of them have to create.
But we haven't even started anything yet. We haven't even, this is
I think
probably
what
the
Travis
biggest-
is trying to
this
say
the
is
most
let's
conversation we've had about it now
let's
since-
start talking to the DOT and see if they would be interested.
I would be more than happy to annex all around Cedar Faye. I'd love to put a housing development out there. I mean, I'd love to annex right below the cemetery, but I'm not gonna spend the taxpayers' money to put sewer and water mains in there and not have anybody build there. I mean, if you get a contractor that says, I'm gonna build 15, 20 homes here in the next year, I will gladly.
Exactly.
That's
what
a
we need.
conversation you can have. I mean, you can have that conversation with builders. Now,
Come to an agreement where we
But you
get
also,
services out there in time for their investment.
but you also gotta get the property, the owners to wanna annex in and sell that land. I mean, there's a lot of them that won't do that.
We've had some interest over the years, but nothing's ever gone through.
well, I'm just hearing a lot of, I don't want to have the conversation, and that's kind of irritating. So, nobody wants to have the conversation. If you don't want to have the conversation, it's never going to happen. Somebody has to have a conversation. Who's going to have it?
All right. Who do you want me to talk to?
Work with Brandon. He gets paid to do that stuff. You know, if you have to work with Brandon to do it, then do
So,
it.
I'm just gonna use the land where it sees the fate.
Right?
Okay, that farmer says, I don't wanna sell it. That pretty much ends it. We can continue it. I mean, and Brandon has talked about some other land, and the people that own it have talked to Brandon about annexing and putting city limits.
That's all I got to say.
Thank you.
I don't have anything to add.
John?
The History Center Board is looking for new board members, so if you're interested, they have monthly meetings there at the History Center. Call their number 455-2714 and leave a message, and somebody will get back to you. And congratulations to the Historic Preservation on the good report they got from the state and about all the things they've done over the past year in spite of COVID, in spite of the derecho. They had a lot more stuff that they wanted to do, but conditions kind of prohibit some of it. So, but congratulations, it's a very active, hard-working group. That's all I have.
Cheryl?
I don't have a whole lot. I do agree with Travis. I think that, we are just a bypass town. We've done all of this historical stuff throughout for people just to drive by. So my thing is if we're gonna spend the money to have those barns redone, don't we want people to see that historical stuff that we've done? They're just driving by. So I'm on the same line as Travis. I think that we need to reach out to the DOT and see if this is even a possibility. If they say no, then we know it's not, right? But there's a reason why we all do these things in town, and that's for people to come here and see. We want to be that historical town, but we don't give them any reason or any easy way to get here. Would it be nice to have a hotel in Lisbon? Why not? We have a huge complex coming, baseball complex. I've been to several baseball tournaments, youth tournaments. Guess what? I'd have to spend the night. Why give that money to Mount Vernon? Do we have an investor in the thing? No. But that's not to say there isn't one out there willing to do it. So again, I will reiterate, we have to be proactive than reactive. And I think there's a lot of reactive that we do than being proactive. And so that ends my spew on that. But my other thing is I just want to recognize Brandon because I think Brandon is now in the ending of month 5 and he's done a remarkable job, I think, with just learning everything that he's done. So I want to give a shout out to Brandon. And nice job to the historical on the report that you guys got. Great job. So that's all I got.
Cameras downtown.
So, Mechanicsville, internet is now in-house here. We still have the phones that we'll be switching soon. But Mediacom is no longer here. Well, we got 30 days to give them a notice. So they were waiting for that cutover. So they're hoping the week of June 7th to be here to start that project.
Does that just put us down with one provider, right?
When we're all done, we got, I know I mentioned before that the wells, water tower, the city shops, we're no longer paying call-outs for that. It's all on Mechanicsville. We still have the lift station, well 4, the other lift station at the ponds, there's one more site, Grant Circle, that station there. Those are not up and running yet, but those are falls open for the time frame. So, yeah, we don't, and that, I updated the last time, insurance is going to cover all the back pay on the call-outs since that was storm related. So, we'll get that back to.
But that, I've got about 6 or 7 more places with this Kingsville phone that we didn't have.
Yeah, all those ones I mentioned, we never had monitoring at, so this is all new.
And plus, we're saving about $5,000 a year.
Yes,
They don't have
it was about half,
Because
Service, single
like
service.
half price, so. And we're getting, like you said, we have to pay site fees to most of these places, but even with the site fees, it was about 2/3 the price or half roughly, so.
And, I'm not against annexation.
I know.
I don't think, but I do not see putting a bunch of money in the ground until we have a firm thing. But anyway, I want to say congratulations to Lisbon's track and field teams. Well, they're very good at state. Always got second, I think.
Yep,
So congratulations to them. Here in a couple of weeks, school's gonna be let out, so watch out for little kids. They're gonna be allowed to run around.
Couple weeks.
Friday. His weeks and days.
I don't know whether they've been out for the last 3 years. So watch out for them. You guys just came in, starting tomorrow, we got the mask mandate in City Hall here, so. It's been a long year for everybody. I mean, I'm glad that kind of getting some sense of normalcy. Glad everybody hung in there, and hopefully this year will be a lot better. We don't think we'll, that's the guy, yeah. Don't say it can get worse.
Always good.
You think you're ready? Meeting adjourned.